everyone, Kelly here, and today I'm wearing my Support Your Local Library shirt because this video is all about my addiction to library books and how I have way too many library books out at this current time. Most of them are new releases, and I need to figure out a way to reduce this down and either read some or return some. So let me just tell you how bad it is right now. So I have 51 books out from the library currently, and those are just for me. That's not including my kids' books. We probably have, another at least 20 of their books out. But just books that I want to read is 51 books. And out of that 51 books, 32, I think I counted, are new releases. So 2023 releases. And part of the reason this happens is that in the past, I've just done this thing where when I'm interested in new releases, when they pop up like on other people's videos, or I know like they're coming out from favorite authors, I just put them on hold at the library, and when they come out, they just, show up at my library and I go and get them. And in the past, this hasn't been too bad because maybe I didn't request as much, or I was keeping up reading my new releases pretty well. But this year, one of my goals was to read 60% of the books that I read is from my physical TBR. So I just haven't been reading as many library books. I actually don't think I've read any new releases, maybe like one so far in 2023. So now I just have this backlog of new releases out from the library. And so I thought one thing I could do is try a chapter. And that way I can decide what I'm going to read right now, when I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in that anymore. And what is like, I'll keep this on my wish list TBR, and I can get it out from the library another time or buy it another time. But, I also want to make sure that I am not keeping out a bunch of books for a really long time, especially new releases that other people might be interested in seeing at the library. So yeah, I definitely want to return a good portion of these. So I pulled out just the adult ones. I'm going to do the middle grade ones separately, kind of look at those separately. But of the adult books, I had 3 books that are just I know I'm going to read these. I don't have to try them. I'm going to keep them. I'm going to read them sometime in the next month. And those are Lost in the Moment and Found by Sean McGuire, because this is a series that I've just been reading. I have read all of them except for one. It's just a random one in the middle. I don't know why, but this is another one that you can kind of read on its own, I believe, a little bit. So yeah, I definitely want to read that one. And then A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. She's one of my favorite authors, so this is a definite must read. And then Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. My husband did the Kickstarter, so we have the audiobook. It's under my husband's account, so I was kind of waiting for him to listen to it first, but I will have access to the audiobook. But I picked up the book from the library in case I prefer to read it physically. So this is a definite, because even if I return this, I'll listen to my husband's when he's done, but he's taking his good old time deciding whether he wants to listen to it, so I might just end up picking up the physical. So those are the ones I don't have to try. I know I'm going to read them. Other adult books, I have 18 here. I'm going to show you all 18, and then I'm going to pick 9 to read the first chapter, and in this video I will do those, and then I might do a second video where I read the other 9, or if I feel like I am burnt out on try a chapter, I'll just return them. So let me show you what they are. I'm not going to give synopsis. I'll show you what the 18 are. That way, if you really want me to read something, you can comment down below in case it's not one of the 9 that I choose to try. First up, I have Lone Women by Victor LaValle. I haven't read anything by this author yet, but I've been interested, and this is getting a lot of buzz right now. And then I have The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. And this one, I've also been intrigued by people that have gotten art copies and what they've said so far. It's a thriller. Next, I have Burnham Wood by Eleanor Catton. And I had heard about this on a podcast, and so that's what made me go and pick that one up, but I don't really know anything about it other than that. Next, I have The Once and Future Sex, Going Medieval on Women's Roles in Society by Eleanor Janega. And I had heard of this on Mara's channel, Books Like Whoa, because we are studying the medieval time period, my daughter and I, and so I thought as me as an adult learning about that time period while I'm learning the kid version with her, I thought this would be an interesting nonfiction to read. Then I have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty, and this has just been everywhere. This is the beginning of a series, so this might be one that I just decide to hold off because, it's the beginning of a series. Maybe I'll wait until more are out. And then I have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshni Chakshi, and I picked this up because I have enjoyed her middle grade and wanted to try her. This is like her first adult book. I have We Are All So Good at Smiling by Amber McBride because I had read Me Moth by her. She writes books in verse, so she writes poetry, and so I just wanted to try her newest one. And then I have Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Amelia Wynne Chow, and I don't know anything about this author. I've only heard like one person review this one, but it had a beautiful cover, so I thought that's what intrigued me. Then I have The Drift by C.J. Tudor, and I have read several books by C.J. Tudor, and so that's why this was interesting to me, and I thought, well, I should read it while it's still winter. Well, it's no longer winter, because I think it's like they're stuck in a snowstorm. It's no longer winter, so maybe that's one I just hold off. I have What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. I have read another one of her like thriller mysteries and enjoyed it, so that's what made me reach for that one. Then I have The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz, which is one that I've heard around as a sci-fi that people have been talking about lately. I have My Dear Henry, which is a Jekyll and Hyde remix by Kaylin Barron, and this is a whole like series of books that retells classics. I haven't read any of them yet in this series, but I thought this one would be a fun retelling. I have Grey Mist Fair by Francesca Zappia, and I had read, what's the one that's popular? Eliza and Her Monsters by this author, and I saw somebody talk about this on their channel, and it just looked kind of spooky and fun. And then one that I hadn't heard anybody talk about, it was just like a cover buy from, or a cover pickup from the library. It's For Twice in My Life by Annette Christie. Haven't ever heard of this book or the author, but it was a romance, and it was sitting on the like new release shelf of the library, and so I just picked it up because I was in the mood to read a romance. Next I have Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, and this is like a novella, and I never read Jade War, Jade Legacy, whatever those are, so I've never read anything by that author. Then I have The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by KJ Charles, and this is a historical romance. And then The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. This is another one I know nothing about. This is another just cover pickup. I saw this, it looked very pretty, and so I picked it up. I don't know if it's fantasy or historical. It could be a mix of both, just based on the cover. That's what the vibes it gives me. And the last one is Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. I had read her novella duology that she came out with like a few years ago, and so I just wanted to try something else by this author. So that is all of the adult books that I have out from the library right now. Some of those might be young adult as well, so anything that is not middle grade. And so I will pick 9 of these, and I will come back to you and after trying a chapter and let you know what I think, whether I'm keeping them to finish, whether I'm sending them back and no longer interested or want to pick it up later. So I will see you soon. All right, so I'm in the same spot, but it's later in the day, and I have read the first chapter of 4 things. So like I said, I'm going to read the first chapter of 9 books. I picked some things that I didn't really know much about, and some other ones that just were really calling to me. And I'm just in the really mood right now, I think, to read a mystery or thriller horror type thing. And so the first 4 I read were all in that genre. So let's see which one of these I want to continue, or which ones. So the first one I picked up was Grey Mist Fair, and this one is young adult. It's the only one so far I read that is young adult, and this is definitely like a fairy tale retelling / horror. I don't know, it had a lot of different like descriptions when you look it up in Goodreads. And this one is about this town, which is called Grey Mist Fair, and it's surrounded by these woods, and the people of the town do not go in the woods because it says in here something, there are creatures that will eat you if you go into the woods. And so it has a very fairy tale vibe. This one pulled me in from like page 1. And I like read like a little tiny prologue, which was like 2 pages, and then the first chapter. And the first chapter had like a big like thing happen towards the end of the chapter. So it definitely like was pulling me to want to keep going. It had that dark fairy tale vibe, which I've been really into lately. So this is a definite want to keep, hopefully continue soon. If not, definitely will keep it on the TBR. And then I picked up What Lies in the Woods, and this one I just read this one also I think had it was either a prologue or the very first chapter. I guess they're not labeled. Yeah, the chapters are not numbered, but the first chapter was only 2 pages long, and it kind of was like a prologue because it was setting the scene of an event that had happened in the past. So basically in the past, these 3 friends went into the woods only 2 came out. The third girl was attacked, and you know, and then they sent a man to jail, and then it's like the whole description is that, you know, that they were lying, but we don't know what they're lying about. And so then that was like a 2-page beginning that kind of like talked about what happened back then, and then what I would call the first chapter of like current day, where, you know, this is like 20 years after that event. And this one also captured me right away, and like also ended with like a big thing happening that I was like, I need to know what's going on. In the first, like, you know, 14 pages, it really compelled me. So both these already make me want to keep going. And then I picked up The Writer's Retreat, and this is about a retreat. So we're following a woman who is a writer. What's her name? Alex? Yeah. And she's invited to this writer's retreat. There's also like her like frenemy, like this woman that used to be her good friend, but now they're enemies. And I guess that's going to be a whole thing. And I think this turns into a deadly writing retreat. And this one just did not work for me. I read the first chapter. I think it was around 14 pages, and it just was not captivating me at all. I didn't like our main character even a little bit from the beginning. I didn't really care for this whole, like, we get to see that there is this conflict between her and her ex-best friend, and I just didn't care. And then I went and like read some more reviews, and some of the content that's in here was not something I'm interested in, which I don't want to, like, you know, with thrillers, you don't want to like give a lot away. So if you want to look up content, you can, but it just didn't appeal to me. So this one is going back to the library, and I don't think that I would pick it up later. Like, I just don't think it's for me. And then I picked up Lone Women, and this one, all I had heard, and I only read the very like first like sentence of the synopsis, which is the same thing I've heard from other people, because people don't give a lot away, is that this woman is fleeing her home. She catches her home on fire with her parents in it, and then leaves with a trunk. And that's what happens at the very beginning in this first chapter. And that's what everybody talks about, this mysterious trunk and her leaving, you know, burning down her home and all this. So that's what everybody talks about, and that's what happens. And it was compelling, it was well written, and I want to know what happens. So the problem with this so far is it's not helping me to narrow it down, because of the first 4, 3 of them I want to continue, and I want to continue like now. So we'll see. That's all I'm gonna, it's bedtime now, so that is like all I'm gonna read for today. I will do the first chapters of the other 5 tomorrow and let you know. And I'm hoping, like, there's part of me that hopes they're duds so that I don't keep all of them, but then also I want books that I can be excited about. But yeah, so far only sending 1 back to the library. All right, so I have read the beginning of 2 more. Before I went to bed last night, I ended up reading the first chapter of the 2 romances, because I figured they would go pretty quickly before bedtime. And I did not bring them with me this morning because I'm doing like errands while my daughter's in preschool, but I have some time before I have to go pick her up, so I thought I would just chat about them. So I'll end up putting the pictures here. So I started first with The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen. And this one was a bit of a surprise, because looking at the cover, I mean, it's historical romance, so I was expecting it to have like sex scenes, but I was not expecting it to start on like page 3. So yeah, so this is a historical romance between male romance, and we're following a man I believe has inherited his man. Sorry, I'm in the parking lot, and this person, like, this is a huge mall parking lot that's mostly abandoned, and this woman like came within like 2 inches of my car. It seemed like she came so quick and close, and I'm like, literally, this is a huge parking lot, and the closest store, I'm parked at the very end of the parking lot. I don't know why you had to drive so close to me. Anyways, so there's a man who I think is inherited his dad's estate, but he and his dad were estranged, so he's not used to being entitled. And then there's a guy who's like a smuggler, and they're the ones that are going to fall in love. But the first chapter is in the past. So they had met in the past and had like a fling for like a week before they went their separate ways. They didn't even exchange names. They had code names. And then the rest of the novel, I think, is going to take place in the current timeline. where they'll meet up again and actually learn each other's identities. So the first chapter is just their like initial meeting back when they had their fling. And so it makes sense that they would have a sex scene immediately because, you know, that's what they were doing. They were having a fling. But I'm just not used to picking up a book and having a sex scene right from couple pages in. I know I've read books in the past where there has been this kind of dynamic where they have had a past sexual, you know, experience and then now they're having an established relationship. But usually when I've seen it in the past, in the books I've read, it's been a flashback. So the sex scene isn't like the immediate first thing and kind of like the prologue type chapter. It's done later as a flashback. And so that kind of like, I don't know, I don't mind sex scenes in books. I just don't usually like to read them immediately. I like to get to know my characters before I want to experience a sex scene, because it just kind of makes me uncomfortable when I'm like, I don't know you two at all, and now I have to like hear about you naked and what you're doing. Like, I'd rather like establish a personality first. That's just my preference. I don't think there's anything wrong with this book. I'm sure a lot of people are really enjoying it. The characters seem fun. It's just not for me to start off straight off like that. So it didn't make me want to continue the book, so I'm going to return this one. The other romance that I picked up was For Twice in My Life. Hopefully that was the title. This is the one that I had never heard of before. It was just in the library. It looked like a cute romance. And I remembered reading the synopsis and finding it interesting. And I realize now why, because it's basically While You Were Sleeping, the movie. Because it's like following this woman who, her and her boyfriend, he had broken up with her. A couple weeks later, he gets in a really bad accident, loses his memory, and she's like, you know, on his medical records as like, you know, the emergency contact, and he doesn't remember that he broke up with her. And so she's just pretending that that never happened. And then also his brother comes to help take care of him in his recovery. So like, yeah, it's like While You Were Sleeping. And that is like one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time. So that's why I picked it up. But this first chapter really did not compel me at all. Like, I didn't really enjoy this main character. I mean, obviously just the beginning, I would probably get to like her, but I wasn't feeling pulled in. And so I went and looked on Goodreads just to get some other opinions. And this has a really low rating. And from some of the things people were saying, I'm like, well, maybe I wouldn't enjoy this one as much as, you know, like While You Were Sleeping, the movie. People said it wasn't really funny, like it wasn't really a romantic comedy like the movie version. And so I just don't know if I'm interested. So I'm going to send this one back to the library. And if there are more reviews in the future and it pops back on my radar, I might read it again in the future. But I didn't really, neither of these romances compelled me to want to keep going. And I really need to like return some of these books. So that's where we're at. I will read the first chapter of the last 3 for this and get back to you. All right, time to wrap this up. I got through the last 3. So next I picked up The Terraformers and read the first chapter. This is a sci-fi that's all about terraforming planets. We're following this being that lives, they don't say what type of person they are, and is kind of protecting this planet that's being terraformed, so there aren't supposed to be like other like humans on the planet. And, you know, just that's their job, is to protect the planet while it's terraforming until it's like inhabitable for humans or other human-like beings or whatever. I don't know. This was a little too much sci-fi for what I'm in the mood for. So I was reading it, and it was just taking me a little while to get into it. You know, it's using all these different words that are, you know, made up to this world. And I was just like, okay, this is going to be one of those that I have to concentrate and all that. And I just wasn't in the mood for that. I don't know if I'll pick this up at another point. I may, but right now I'm just not in the mood for that brand new world, bunch of new words type thing. So that one is going back. And then I picked up The Magician's Daughter. And this one's kind of like a historical fiction fantasy. So I think this is taking place in like the early 1900s. There's this girl who, she's 16, I think, in this beginning of this book, the chapter I read. She lives on this little island off of Ireland. She's lived there her entire life with her guardian. And her guardian has told her that she, you know, washed up on shore in a boat when she was a baby. And so and that she's not safe to go to the mainland. So she only knows her guardian and his familiar, which is a rabbit. And those are the only like human and rabbit are the only people that she knows in the entire world. She's never been off this island. And her guardian comes back and forth, to get supplies, and one day doesn't return at his normal time. And so I think the book from the synopsis is that she's going to finally leave the island to try to find her guardian. And this one, I really enjoyed the writing in this. I really enjoyed the setup of the island and our characters. I liked the dialogue. I liked a lot about it, but it definitely feels like it's going to be a slow-moving, cozy type fantasy. I'm not for sure, but that's how it felt. Like, it felt like definitely like reading a slow historical fiction where it's really focused on the characters, but with magic. And so I definitely want to read this, but I don't think I want to read it right now. This seems like something I would pull out in the fall or winter when I want to cozy up. Not something I necessarily want to have at this time of year when everything's kind of going wild with, like, spring and end of school and all that stuff. So this one I'm not going to keep right now, but I will get it out again at some time. It'll stay on my TBR. And then the last one was Burnham Wood. And this I didn't end up reading because I picked it up to read a chapter and found out there are no chapters. There's not even breaks. It is just like completely goes. It doesn't have any like, how sometimes they won't have chapters, but they'll have like line breaks. Nothing. This is just like steady words the whole time. And so that was daunting. So I was like, okay, I put it down and I was like, well, I'll pick it back up and I'll just read 10 pages and I'll count that. And I kept like going to pick it up and I was like, no, I don't really want to read this. And I don't know what it is about books with no chapters, no breaks at all. I just do not like them. And then I was like, well, it feels pretentious to me. And so then I look it up and I looked up kind of like what this is about. And I just got even bored reading the synopsis. And then a lot of people it gets good ratings, but a lot of people in the like reviews are like, this is a literary psychological thriller. And I just don't do well when there's anything thrillery that is like described as literary. I want my thrillers to just be entertaining. I don't want a literary masterpiece of a thriller. So I just didn't even pick this up. I tried, like, as in, like, I kept for like 3 days. It's been a few days since I read the last one. I was like, I'm gonna do it. And then I was like, no, I'm never gonna pick this up. So it's going back to the library. And so, like, to wrap this up, I ended up, I read the first chapter of 8 books and then had a 9th in this list. And out of those, I have 5 that are going back to the library. And then, so that would be, these are ones that I probably won't be even keeping on my TBR. The Burnham Wood, the Transformers, maybe someday, but maybe not. The Writing Retreat, definitely not. The 2 romances, those are all coming off my TBR. The Magician's Daughter is going back to the library, but staying on my TBR. And the ones I'm keeping are all like thriller horrors. Like, I'm keeping What Lies in the Woods, Grey Miss Fair, and Lone Women. I obviously have something I'm in the mood for right now. So those are the ones I'm keeping. And then I looked through the like 9 that I didn't read the first chapter, and I picked ones I'm going to send back that I just don't think I'm in the mood for. I just can tell I'm in the mood for something quick to read based off of what I decided to keep, which was like thriller horror. And so I decided to send back a lot of the fantasy that I'm just not in that mood for big fantasy. So, like, for example, The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. This is the beginning of a new series. I'm going to have to wait for the sequel anyway, so I'm going to send it back and I will get it when the second book comes out. I decided My Dear Henry, I'm just not in the mood for this kind of like classic retelling. That's not really a fantasy, but I don't think I'm in the mood for that. This new fantasy book, I haven't heard enough reviews on this, so I'm not sure how I feel about it, so I'm going to give it some time to get reviews. Untethered Sky, I had watched a couple reviews and they weren't glowing reviews, and so I'm just going to wait until more reviews come out and see if I'm interested. And then Some Desperate Glory as well. I've heard some mixed reviews already, and I just want to give it some more time. So some of these I'm like, I don't need to be one of the very first people to read them if they're not like top priority for me. So that's actually quite a lot going back to the library. So that makes me feel good. I did keep a few of the other 9, and then I'm keeping 3 of the ones that I tried. And then I said I had those 3 that I was like, I'm definitely reading those, like the T. Kingfisher book and the Brandon Sanderson book, and I forgot what the third one was. But yeah, and the Wayward Children series. So I know I'm going to read those. So I'm still keeping some, but I'm feeling a little less intimidated by my library books. And that way more people can see these new releases and pick them up, let other people have them. Or maybe you heard me talk about them and said, oh, well, it might not be for her, but it's for me. Yeah, if you like a slow-moving literary thriller, maybe Birnam Wood is for you, but it's not for me. So that's it for me today. I will talk to you next time. Bye.